Translation of the太Jinhòa宗旨, The Secret of the Golden Flower. 1. Heavenly Consciousness, the Heart. Master Lao Tzu said, "That which exists through itself is called meaning, Tao. Meaning has neither name nor force. It is the one essence, the one primordial spirit. Essence and life cannot be seen. It is contained in the light of heaven. The light of heaven cannot be seen. It is contained in the two eyes. Today I will be your guide, and will first reveal to you the secret of the golden flower of the Great One. And, starting from that, I will explain the rest in detail. The Great One is the term given to that which has nothing above it. The secret of the magic of life consists in using action in order to achieve non-action. One must not wish to leave out the steps between and penetrate directly. The maxim handed down to us is to take in hand the work on the essence. In doing this, it is important not to follow the wrong road. The golden flower is the light. What color has the light? One uses the golden flower as an image. It is the true power of the transcendent Great One. The phrase, "the lead of the water region has but one taste," refers to it. In the Book of Changes it is said, the references on this and the following pages are to remarks on page 71. 1. This commentary probably comes from the 17th or 18th century. Heaven created water through the One. That is the true power of the Great One. If a man attains this one, he becomes alive. If he misses it, he dies. But even if a man lives in the power, air, or prana, he does not see the power, or air, just as fishes live in water but do not see the water. A man dies when he has no life air, just as the fishes are destroyed when deprived of water. Therefore, the adepts have taught the people to hold fast to the primal and to guard the One. It is the circular course of the light and the protection of the center. If one guards this true power, one can prolong the span of life, and can then apply the methods of creating an immortal body by melting and mixing. The work on the circulation of the light depends entirely on the backward flowing movement, so that the thoughts are gathered together. The place of heavenly consciousness, the heavenly heart. The heavenly heart lies between sun and moon, i.e. the two eyes. The Book of the Yellow Castle says, "In the field of the square inch of the house of the square foot, life can be regulated. The house of the square foot is the face. The field of the square inch in the face, what could that be other than the heavenly heart? In the middle of the square inch dwells the splendor. In the purple hall of the city of jade dwells the God of utmost emptiness and life. The Confucians call it the center of emptiness. The Buddhists, the terrace of life. The Taoists, the ancestral land, or the yellow castle, or the dark pass, or the space of former heaven. The heavenly heart is like the dwelling place. The light is the master. Therefore, when the light circulates, the powers of the whole body arrange themselves before its throne. just as when a holy king has taken possession of the capital and has laid down the fundamental rules of order, all the states approach with tribute, or just as when the master is quiet and calm, men, servants, and maids obey his orders of their own accord, and each does his work. Therefore, you only have to make the light circulate. That is the deepest and most wonderful secret. The light is easy to move, but difficult to fix. If it is allowed to go long enough in a circle, then it crystallizes itself. That is the natural spirit body. This crystallized spirit is formed beyond the 9 heavens. It is the condition of which it is said in the book of the seal of the heart, "Silently in the morning thou fliest upward." In carrying out this fundamental truth, you need to seek for no other methods, but must only concentrate your thoughts on it. The book Lang Yen 2 says, 2. Lang Yen is the Buddhist Lankavatara Sutra. By collecting the thoughts, one can fly and will be born in heaven. Heaven is not the wide blue sky, but the place where the body is made in the house of the creative. If one keeps this up for a long time, there develops quite naturally, in addition to the body, yet another spirit body. The golden flower is the elixir of life, Chin Tan, literally golden ball or golden pill. All changes of spiritual consciousness depend upon the heart. Here is a secret charm, which, although it works very accurately, is yet so fluent that it needs extreme intelligence and clarity, and complete absorption in calm. People without the highest degree of intelligence and understanding do not find the way to apply the charm. People without this utmost capacity for concentration and calm cannot keep fast hold of it. This section explains the origin of the great meaning of the world, Tao. The heavenly heart is the germinal root of the great meaning. If a man can be absolutely quiet when the heavenly heart will manifest itself, when the feeling springs up and flows out in the natural course, the person is created as primordial creature. This creature abides between conception and birth in true space. When the one note of individuation enters into birth, essence and life are divided in 2. From this time on, if the utmost peace is not achieved, essence and life never see each other again. Therefore it is said in the plan of the Great Pole, the Great One includes within itself true power, prana, seed, spirit, animus, and anima. If the thoughts are absolutely quiet so that the heavenly heart can be seen, the spiritual intelligence reaches the source unaided. This essence lives indeed in true space, but the splendor of the light dwells in the 2 eyes. Therefore, the Master teaches the circulation of the light so that the true essence may be reached. The true essence is the primordial spirit. The primordial spirit is precisely essence and life, and if one accepts what is real in it, it is the primordial power, and the great meaning is just this thing. The Master is further concerned that the people should not miss the way that leads from conscious action to unconscious non-action. Therefore, he says, the magic of the elixir of life makes use of conscious action in order that the non-action may be attained. Conscious action consists in setting the light in circulation by reflection in order to make manifest the setting free of heaven. If then the true seed is born, and the right method applied in order to melt and mix it, and in that way to create the elixir of life, then one goes through the pass. The embryo, which must be developed by the work of warming, nourishing, bathing, and washing, is formed. A whole year of this fire period is needed before the embryo is born, sheds the membranes, and passes out of the ordinary world into the holy world. This method is quite simple and easy, but there are so many transforming and changing conditions connected with it that it is said, not with one leap can a man suddenly get there. Whoever is seeking eternal life must search for the place whence essence and life originally spring. 2. The primordial spirit and the conscious spirit. Master Lao Tzu said, "In comparison with heaven and earth, man is like a mayfly. But compared to the great meaning, heaven and earth too are like a bubble and a shadow." But compared to the great meaning, heaven and earth too are like a bubble and a shadow. Only the primordial spirit and the true essence overcome time and space. The power of the seed, like heaven and earth, is subject to mortality, but the primordial spirit is beyond the polar differences. Here is the place whence heaven and earth derive their being. When students understand how to grasp the primordial spirit, they overcome the polar opposites of light and darkness, and tarry no longer in the three worlds. 3. Heaven, earth, and hell. But only he who has looked on essence in its original manifestation is able to do this. When men are set free from the womb, the primordial spirit dwells in the square inch between the eyes, but the conscious spirit dwells below in the heart. This lower fleshly heart has the shape of a large peach. It is covered by the wings of the lungs, supported by the liver, and served by the bowels. This heart is dependent on the outside world. If a man does not eat for one day even, it feels extremely uncomfortable. If it hears something terrifying, it throbs. If it hears something enraging, it stops. If it is faced with death, it becomes sad. If it sees something beautiful, it is dazzled. But the heavenly heart in the head, when would it have been in the least moved? Dost thou ask, can the heavenly heart not be moved? Then I answer, how could the true thought in the square inch be moved? If it really moves, it is not well. For when ordinary men die, then it moves, but that is not good. It is best indeed if the light has already fortified itself in a spirit body, and its life force gradually penetrated the instincts and movements. But that is a secret which has not been revealed for thousands of years. The lower heart moves like a strong, powerful commander who despises the heavenly ruler because of his weakness, and has seized for himself the leadership of the affairs of state. But when the primordial castle can be fortified and defended, then it is as if a strong and wise ruler sat upon the throne. The two eyes start the light, circulating like two ministers at the right and left, who support the ruler with all their might. When the ruler in the center is thus in order, all those rebellious heroes will present themselves with lances reversed, ready to take orders. The way to the elixir of life recognizes as supreme magic seed water, spirit fire, and thought earth. These three. What is seed water? It is the true one power, Eros, of former heaven. Spirit fire is the light, or logos. Thought earth is the heavenly heart of the middle house, intuition. Spirit fire is used for effecting, thought earth for substance, and seed water for the foundation. Ordinary men make their bodies through thoughts. The body is not only the 7-foot-tall outer body. In the body is the anima. The anima, having produced consciousness, adheres to it. Consciousness depends for its origin on the anima. The anima is feminine, yin, the substance of consciousness. As long as this consciousness is not interrupted, it continues to beget from generation to generation, and the changes of form of the anima and the transformations of substance are unceasing. But besides this, there is the animus in which the spirit shelters. The animus lives in the daytime in the eyes, at night in the houses and the liver. When living in the eyes it sees, when housing itself in the liver it dreams. Dreams are the wanderings of the spirit through all 9 heavens and all the 9 earths. But whoever is dull and moody on waking, and chained to his bodily form, is fettered by the anima. Therefore, the concentration of the animus is affected by the circulation of the light, and in this way the spirit is protected, the anima subjected, and consciousness annulled. The method used by the ancients for escaping from the world consisted in burning out completely the slag of darkness in order to return to the purely creative. This is nothing more than a reduction of the anima and a bringing to perfection of the animus, and the circulation of the light is the magical means of limiting the dark powers and gaining mastery of the anima. Even if the work is not directed toward bringing back the creative, but confines itself to the magical means of the circulation of the light, it is just the light that is creative. By means of its circulation, one returns to the creative. If this method is followed, plenty of seed water will be present of itself. The spirit fire will be ignited, and the thought earth will solidify and crystallize, and thus can the holy fruit mature. The scarabaeus rolls his ball, and in the ball there develops life as the effect of the undivided effort of his spiritual concentration. If now an embryo can grow in manure and shed its skin, why should not the dwelling place of our heavenly heart also be able to create a body if we concentrate the spirit upon it? The one effective true essence, logos united with life, when it descends into the house of the creative, divides into animus and anima. The animus is in the heavenly heart. It is of the nature of light, and it is the power of lightness and purity. It is that which we have received from the great emptiness, that which has form from the very beginning. The anima partakes of the nature of darkness. It is the power of the heavy and the turbid. It is bound to the bodily, fleshly heart. The animus loves life. The anima seeks death. All sensuous pleasures and impulses to anger are effects of the anima. It is the conscious spirit which after death is nourished on blood, but which during life is in direst need. Darkness returns to darkness, and like things attract each other. But the pupil understands how to distill the dark anima so that it transforms itself into light. Yang. 4. 4. Light is meant here as a world principle, the positive pole, not as light that shines. In this part, there is described the role played by the primordial spirit and the conscious spirit in the making of the human body. The Master says, "The life of man is like that of a mayfly. Only the true essence of the primordial spirit can escape the cycle of heaven and earth and the fate of the eons. The true essence proceeds from that which has no polarity, and receives the primordial force of polarity, whereby it takes the true essence of heaven and earth into itself and becomes the conscious spirit. As primordial spirit, it receives the essence from Father and Mother. This primordial spirit is without consciousness and knowledge, but is able to regulate the formative processes of the body. The conscious spirit is very apparent and very effective, and can adapt itself unceasingly. It is the ruler of the human heart. As long as it stays in the body, it is the animus. After its departure from the body, it becomes spirit. While the body is entering into existence, the primordial spirit has not yet made an embryo in which it could incorporate itself. Thus, it crystallizes itself in free oneness without poles. At the time of birth, the conscious spirit draws in the power of the air, and thus becomes the dwelling of the newborn. It lives in the heart. From that time on, the heart is master, and the primordial spirit loses its place while the conscious spirit has power. The primordial spirit loves peace, and the conscious spirit loves movement. In its movement, it remains bound to the feelings and desires. Day and night, it wastes the primal seed till the force of the primordial spirit is entirely used up. Then the conscious spirit leaves the shell and goes away. Whoever has done good in the main has a power of spirit that is pure and clear when death comes. It passes out by the upper openings of mouth and nose. The pure and light air power rises upward and floats up to heaven and becomes the fivefold present shadow genius or shadow spirit. But if during life the primordial spirit was used by the conscious spirit for avarice, folly, desire, and lust, and has committed all sorts of sins, then in the moment of death the power of the spirit is troubled and confused, and the conscious spirit passes, together with the air, through the lower openings to the door of the belly. For if the power of the spirit is turbid and unclean, it crystallizes downward, sinks down to hell, and becomes a demon. Then not only the primordial spirit loses its nature, but the power and wisdom of the true essence is thereby lessened. Therefore the Master says, "If it moves itself, that is not good. If one wants to protect the primordial spirit, one must first not fail to subjugate the knowing spirit. The way to subjugate it leads through the circulation of the light. If one puts the circulation of the light into practice, one must forget both body and heart. The heart must die, the spirit live. When the spirit lives, the breath will begin to circulate in a wonderful way. This is what the Master called the best." 5. The 4 stages of rebirth are characterized here. The rebirth out of water and spirit is the development of the pneumatic body, within the perishable body of the flesh. In this there is shown a relationship to the thoughts of Paul and John. Then the spirit must be allowed to dive down into the abdomen or solar plexus. The power then mixes with the spirit, and the spirit unites with the power and becomes crystallized. This is the method of putting the hand to it. In time, the primordial spirit transforms itself in the dwelling of life into the true power. At that time, the method of the turning of the mill wheel must be applied in order to distill it so that it becomes the elixir of life. That is the method of concentrated work. When the life elixir pearl is finished, the holy embryo can be formed. Then the work must be directed to the warming and nourishing of the spiritual embryo. That is the method of the finishing. When the power body of the child is fully formed, the work must be so directed that the embryo is born and returns again to emptiness. That is the method of the releasing of the hand. From the most ancient times till today, this is not empty talk, but the sequence of the great meaning in the real method of producing an eternally living and immortal spirit and holy man. But if the work is so far successful, then all belonging to the dark principle is entirely destroyed, and the body born into pure light. When the conscious spirit has been transformed into the primordial spirit, then only can one say that it has attained an unending capacity for transformation, and, departing from the cycle of births, has been brought to the sixfold, present, golden spirit. 6. The fivefold present spirit into which the good man is transformed in his dark strivings at his death is limited to the region of the five senses, and is therefore still imprisoned on this earth. Rebirth effects his transition into the sixth, the spiritual realm. If this method of ennobling is not applied, how will the way of being born and dying be escaped? 3. Circulation of the light and protection of the center. Master Lao Tzu said, "Since when has the expression circulation of the light been revealed? It was revealed by the true men of the beginning of form." Kuan Yin Si 7. 7. A pupil of Lao Tzu. When the light is allowed to move in a circle, all the powers of heaven and earth, of the light and the dark, are crystallized. That is what is described as seed-like, or purification of the power, or purification of the concept. When one begins to apply this magic, it is as if in the middle of one's being there were a non-being. When in the course of time the work is finished, and beyond the body there is another body, it is as if in the middle of the non-being there were a being. Only after a completed work of 100 days will the light be real. Then only will it become spirit fire. After 100 days there develops by itself in the middle of the light a point of the true light pole, Yang. Suddenly there develops the seed pearl. It is as if a man and woman embraced in a conception took place. Then one must be quite still in order to await it. The circulation of the light is the epoch of fire. In the midst of primal becoming, the radiance of the light, Yang Kuang, is the determining thing. In the physical world it is the sun, in man the eye. The emanation and dissemination of spiritual consciousness is chiefly brought about by this power. When it is directed outward, flows downward. Therefore, the meaning of the golden flower depends wholly on the backward flowing method. Man's heart stands under the fire sign, 8. The two psychic poles are here contrasted with one another. They are represented as logos, heart consciousness, to be found under the fire sign, and eros, kidneys, sexuality, under the water sign. The natural man lets both these forces work outwardly, intellect in the process of procreation, and in this way they stream out and are consumed. The adept turns them inward, and brings them together whereby they fertilize one another, and thus produce a psychically red-blooded and therefore strong life of the spirit. The flames of the fire press upward. When both eyes are looking at things of the world, it is with vision directed outward. Now if one closes the eyes and reversing the glance, directs it inward and looks at the room of the ancestors, that is the backward flowing method. The power of the kidneys is under the water sign. When the instincts are stirred, it runs downward, is directed outward, and creates children. If, in the moment of release, it is not allowed to flow outward but is led back by the force of thought, so that it penetrates the crucible of the creative and refreshes heart and body and nourishes them, that also is the backward flowing method. Therefore it is said, the meaning of the elixir of life depends entirely on the backward flowing method. Circulation of the light is not only a circulation of the seed blossom of the one body, but it is in the first place a circulation of the true creative formative powers. It has to do not with a momentary fantasy, but with the exhaustion of the circular course, soul wanderings of all the eons. Therefore, a breath pause means a year, according to human reckoning, and 100 years measured by the long night of the 9 paths of reincarnation. After a man has the one tone of individuation, 9, behind him, 9, the character Ho, translated by individuation, is written with the symbol for power, inside an enclosure. Thus it means the form of the entelechy imprinted in the monad. It is the loosening of a unit of power and the veiling of it with the seed powers that led to incarnation. The process is represented as connected with a sound. Empirically, it coincides with conception. From that time on, there takes place an ever-advancing development, or unfolding, until birth brings the individual to light. From then it continues automatically farther till the power is exhausted and death ensues. He will be born outward according to the circumstances, and not until he is old will he turn a single time to the backward flowing way. The force of the light exhausts itself and trickles away. That brings the ninefold darkness of rebirths into the world. In the book Lang Yen 10, it is said, 10 Lankavatara Sutra, Buddhist Sutra. By concentrating the thoughts, one can fly. By concentrating the desires, one falls. When a pupil takes little care of his thoughts and much care of his desires, he gets into the path of depravity. Only through contemplation and quietness does true intuition arise. For that, the backward flowing method is necessary. In the book of the Secret Correspondences, 11, Yin Fu Ching Taoist Sutra, it is said, release is in the eye. In the Simple Questions of the Yellow Ruler, 12, Su Wen, a Taoist work of a later time which purports to come from the mythical ruler Huang Ti. It is said, the seed blossom of the human body must be concentrated upward in the empty space. That refers to it. Immortality is contained in this sentence, and also the overcoming of the world is contained in it. That is the common goal of all religions. The light is not in the body alone, neither is it only outside the body. Mountains and rivers and the great earth are lit by sun and moon. All that is this light. Therefore it is not only within the body. Understanding and clarity, knowing and enlightenment, and all motion of the spirit are likewise this light. Therefore, it is not just something outside the body. The light flower of heaven and earth fills all 1,000 spaces, but also the light flower of one body passes through heaven and covers the earth. Therefore, just as the light is circulating, so heaven and earth, mountains and rivers, are all rotating with it at the same time. To concentrate the seed flower of the human body above in the eyes, that is the great key of the human body. Children, take heed. If for a day you do not practice meditation, this light streams out who knows whither. If you only meditate for a quarter of an hour, you can set 10,000 eons and 1,000 births at rest. All methods take their source in quietness. This marvelous magic cannot be fathomed. But when the work is started, one must press on from the obvious to the profound, from the coarse to the fine. Everything depends on there being no interruption. The beginning and the end of the work must be one. In between, there are cooler and warmer moments. That goes without saying. But the goal must be to reach the breadth of heaven and the depths of the sea, so that all methods seem quite easy and taken for granted. Only then do we have it in hand. All holy men have bequeathed this to one another. Nothing is possible without contemplation. Fan Chao, reflection. When Confucius says, knowing brings one to the goal, or when Buddha calls it the view of the heart, or Lao Tzu says inward vision, it is all the same. Anyone can talk about reflection, but he cannot master it if he does not know what the word means. What has to be changed by reflection is the self-conscious heart, which has to direct itself toward that point where the formative spirit is not yet manifest. Within our 6-foot body, we must strive for the form which existed before the laying down of heaven and earth. If today people sit and meditate only for 1 or 2 hours, looking only at their own egos, and call it contemplation, how can anything come of it? The two founders of Buddhism and Taoism have taught that one should look at the end of one's nose. But they did not mean that one should fasten one's thoughts to the end of the nose. Neither did they mean that while the eyes were looking at the end of the nose, the thoughts should be concentrated on the yellow middle. Wherever the eye looks, the heart is directed also. How can the glance be directed at the same time upward, yellow middle, and downward, end of the nose, or alternating so that it is now up, now down? All that means confusing the finger with which one points to the moon with the moon itself. What is really meant by this? The expression end of the nose is very cleverly chosen. The nose must serve the eyes as a guiding line. If one is not guided by the nose, either one opens wide the eyes and looks into the distance so that the nose is not seen, or the lids shut too much so that the eyes close, and again the nose is not seen. But when the eyes are opened too wide, one makes the mistake of directing them outward, whereby one is easily distracted. If they are closed too much, then one makes the mistake of letting them turn inward, whereby one easily sinks into a dreamy reverie. Only when the eyelids are sunk properly halfway is the end of the nose seen in just the right way. Therefore it is taken as a guiding line. The main thing is to lower the eyelids in the right way, and then to allow the light to stream in of itself without trying to force the light to stream in by a concentrated effort. Looking at the nose serves only as the beginning of the inner concentration, so that the eyes are brought into the right direction for looking, and then are held to the guiding line. After that, one can let it be. That is the way a mason hangs up a plumb line. As soon as he has hung it up, he guides his work by it without continually bothering himself to look at the plumb line. Fixating contemplation, 13. The method of fixating contemplation, Qi Kuan, is the meditation method of the Buddhist Tian Tai school, or Tendai. It alternates between the fixation of the thoughts by breathing practices and contemplation. In the following, some of its methods are taken over. The conditions are the circumstances, the environment, which in conjunction with the causes, yin, start the rotation of the illusion. In the center of the conditions there is, quite literally, the fixed pole in the flight of phenomena. Is a Buddhist method by which no means has been handed down as a secret. One looks with both eyes at the end of the nose, sits upright and in a comfortable position, and holds the heart to the center in the midst of conditions, on the fixed pole in the flight of phenomena. In Taoism it is called the yellow middle. In Buddhism, the center in the midst of conditions. The two are the same. It does not necessarily mean the middle of the head. It is only a matter of fixing one's thinking on the point which lies exactly between the two eyes. Then all is well. The light is something extremely mobile. When one fixes the thought on the midpoint between the two eyes, the light streams in of its own accord. It is not necessary to direct the attention especially to the central castle. In these few words, the most important thing is contained. The center in the midst of conditions is a very fine expression. The center is omnipresent. Everything is contained in it. It is connected with the release of the whole process of creation. The condition is the portal. The condition, that is, the fulfillment of this condition, makes the beginning, but it does not bring about the rest with inevitable necessity. The meaning of these two words is very fluid and subtle. Fixating contemplation is indispensable. It ensures the strengthening of illumination. Only one must not stay sitting rigidly if worldly thoughts come up, but one must examine where the thought is, where it began, and where it fades out. Nothing is gained by pushing reflection farther. One must be content to see where the thought arose, and not seek beyond the point of origin. For to find the heart, consciousness, to get behind consciousness with consciousness, that cannot be done. We want to bring the states of the heart together in rest. That is true contemplation. What contradicts it is false contemplation. This leads to no goal. When the flight of thoughts keeps extending farther, one should stop and begin contemplating. Let one contemplate and then start concentrating again. That is the double method of strengthening the illumination. It means the circular course of the light. The circular course is fixation. The light is contemplation. Fixation without contemplation is circulation without light. Contemplation without fixation is light without circulation. Take note of that. The general meaning of this section is that the protection of the center is important for the circular course of the light. The last section dealt with the theme that the human body is a very valuable possession when the primordial spirit is master. But when it is used by the conscious spirit, the latter brings it about that day and night the primordial spirit is scattered and wasted. When it is completely worn out, the body dies. The method is described whereby the conscious spirit can be subjected and the primordial spirit guarded. That is impossible if one does not begin by making the light circulate. It is like this. If a splendid house is to be built, a fine foundation must first be found. When the foundation is strong, then only can the work proceed, and the base of the walls be deeply and solidly grounded, and the posts and walls built up. If a foundation is not laid in this way, how can the house be completed? The way of cultivating life is exactly like that. The circulation of the light is to be compared with the foundation of the building. When the foundation stands firm, how quickly can it be built upon? To protect the yellow middle with the fire of the Spirit, that is the work of building. Therefore, the Master makes especially clear the method by which one enters in the cultivation of life, and bids people look with both eyes at the end of the nose, to lower the lids, to look within, sit quietly with upright body, and fix the heart on the center in the midst of the conditions. Keeping the thoughts on the space between the two eyes allows the light to penetrate. Thereupon the spirit crystallizes and enters the center in the midst of the conditions. The center in the midst of the conditions is the lower elixir field, the place of power, solar plexus. The Master hinted at this secretly when he said, "At the beginning of the work one must sit in a quiet room, the body like dry wood, the heart like cooled ashes. Let the lids of both eyes be lowered. Then look within and purify the heart, cleanse the thoughts, stop pleasures, and conserve the seed. One should sit down daily to meditate with legs crossed. Let the light in the eyes be stopped. Let the hearing power of the ear be crystallized and the tasting power of the tongue diminished. That is, the tongue should be laid to the roof of the mouth. Let the breathing through the nose be made rhythmical and the thoughts fixed on the dark door. If the breathing is not first made rhythmical, it is to be feared that there will be difficulty in breathing, because of stoppage. When one closes the eyes, then one should take as a measure a point on the back of the nose which lies not half an inch below the intersection point of the line of sight, where there is a little bump on the nose. Then one begins to collect one's thoughts. The ears make the breathing rhythmical. Body and heart are comfortable and harmonious. The light of the eyes must shine quietly, and for a long time neither sleepiness nor distraction must set in. The eyes do not look outward. They drop their lids and light up what is within. There is light in this place. The mouth does not speak nor laugh. One closes the lips and breathes inwardly. Breathing is at this place. The nose smells no odors. Smelling is at this place. The ear does not hear things outside. Hearing is at this place. The whole heart watches over what is within. Its watching is at this place. The thoughts do not stray outward. True thoughts have continuity in themselves. If the thoughts are lasting, the seed is lasting. If the seed lasts, the power lasts. If the power lasts, then will the spirit last also. The spirit is thought, thought is the heart is the fire is the elixir. When one looks at what is within in this way, the wonders of the opening and shutting of the gates of heaven will be inexhaustible. But the deeper secrets cannot be effected without making the breathing rhythmical. If the pupil begins and cannot hold his thoughts to the place between the two eyes, if he closes the eyes, but the power of the heart does not enable him to look at the place of power. The cause is most probably the fact that the breathing is too loud and hasty. Other evils arise from this because body and heart are kept busy, trying to suppress forcibly the uprush of power in quick breath. If the thoughts are only held to the two eyes, but the spirit is not crystallized in the solar plexus, the center in the midst of the conditions, it is as if one had mounted to the hall but had not yet entered the inner chamber. Then the spirit fire will not develop, the power remains cold, and the true fruit will hardly manifest itself. Therefore the master harbors the fear lest, in their efforts, men only fix their thoughts on the place on the nose, but fail to think of fixing their ideas on the place of power. That is why he used the comparison of the mason with the plumb line. The mason only uses the plumb line in order to see if his wall is perpendicular or slanting, and for this the string serves as a guiding line. When he has determined the direction, he can begin the work. But then he works on the wall, not on the plumb line. That is clear. From this it is seen that fixing the thoughts between the eyes means only what the plumb line does to the mason. The master refers again and again to this because he fears his meaning might not be understood. And even if the pupils have grasped the way of doing the thing, he fears they might interrupt their work, and so he says several times, only after 100 days of consistent work, only then is the light real. Only then can one begin work with the spirit fire. If one proceeds in a collected fashion after 100 days, there develops spontaneously in the light a point of the real creative light, Yang. The pupils must examine that with sincere hearts. 4. Circulation of the light in making the breathing rhythmical. Master Lao Tzu said, "The decision must be carried out with the whole heart, and the result not sought for. The result will come of itself." In the first period of release, there are chiefly two mistakes, laziness and distraction, but that can be remedied. The heart must not enter into the breathing too completely. Breathing comes from the heart. 14. The Chinese character for breath, Hasi, is made up of the character Tzu, of, self, and the character Hasin, heart, consciousness. It can also be interpreted as coming from the heart, but at the same time it describes the condition in which the heart is at one with itself, i.e., quietness. What comes out of the heart is breath. When the heart stirs, there develops breath power. Breath power is originally transformed activity of the heart. When our hearts go very fast, they imperceptibly pass into fantasies which are always accompanied by the drawing of a breath, because this inner and outer breathing hangs together like tone and echo. Daily we draw innumerable breaths and have an equal number of fantasy representations, and thus the clarity of the spirit is depleted just as wood dries out and ashes die. Should a man have no images in his mind? One cannot be without images. Should one not breathe? One cannot do without breathing. The best way is to make a cure out of the illness. Since heart and breath are mutually dependent, the circulation of the light must be united with the rhythm of breathing. For this, light of the ear is above all necessary. There is a light of the eye and a light of the ear. The light of the eye is the united light of the sun and moon outside. The light of the ear is the united seed of sun and moon within. The seed is also the light in crystallized form. Both have the same origin and are different only in name. Therefore, understanding, ear, and clarity, eye, are one and the same effective light. In sitting down, after dropping the lids, one establishes a plumb line with the eyes and shifts the light downward. But if the transposition downward is not successful, then the heart is directed toward listening to the breathing. One should not be able to hear with the ear the outgoing and intaking of the breath. What one hears is that it has no tone. As soon as it has tone, the breathing is rough and superficial and does not penetrate into what is fine. Then the heart must be made quite light and insignificant. The more it is released, the less important it becomes. The less important, the quieter. All at once it becomes so quiet that it stops. Then the true breathing is manifested and the form of the heart can be made conscious. When the heart is light, the breathing is light. For every movement of the heart brings about breathing power. If the breathing is light, the heart is light. For every movement of the breath affects the heart. In order to steady the heart, one begins by cultivating the breathing power. The heart cannot be influenced directly. Therefore, the breathing power is used as a handle, and this is what is called protecting the collected breathing power. Children, do you not understand the nature of motion? Motion can be produced by outside means. It is only another name for mastery. One can make the heart move merely by running. Should one not be able to bring it to rest then by concentrated quietness? The great holy ones who knew how the heart and breathing power mutually influenced one another have thought out an easier procedure as a way of helping posterity. In the Book of the Elixir, 15, a secret book of the sects of the Golden Life Pill, it is said, the hen can hatch her eggs because her heart is always listening. That is an important magic spell. The reason the hen can catch the eggs is because of the power to heat. But the power of the heat can only warm the shells. It cannot penetrate into the interior. Therefore, with her heart, she conducts this power inward. This she does with her hearing. In this way, she concentrates her whole heart. When the heart penetrates, the power penetrates, and the chick receives the power of the heat and begins to live. Therefore, a hen, even when she has her left eggs, always has the attitude of listening with bent ear. Thus, the concentration of the spirit is not interrupted. Because the concentration of the spirit suffers no interruption, neither does the power of heat suffer interruption day or night, and the spirit awakes to life. The awakening of the spirit is accomplished because the heart has first died. When a man can let his heart die, then the primordial spirit wakes to life. To kill the heart does not mean to let it dry and wither away, but it means that it is undivided and gathered into one. Buddha said, when you fix your heart on one point, then nothing is impossible for you. The heart easily runs away, so it is necessary to gather it together by means of breathing power. Breathing power easily becomes coarse, therefore it has to be refined by the heart. When that is done, can it then happen that it is not fixed? The two mistakes of laziness and distraction must be combated by quiet work that is carried on daily without interruption. Then results will certainly be achieved. If one is not seated during meditation, one will often be distracted without noticing it. To become conscious of the inattention is the mechanism by which to do away with inattention. Laziness of which a man is conscious and laziness of which he is unconscious are 1,000 miles apart. Unconscious laziness is real laziness. Conscious laziness is not complete laziness because there is still some clarity in it. Distraction comes from letting the spirit wander about. Laziness comes from the spirit not yet being pure. Distraction is much easier to correct than laziness. It is as in sickness. If one feels pain and itchings, one can help them with remedies. But laziness is like a disease that is attended by loss of feeling. Distraction can be overcome, confusion can be straightened out, but laziness and absent-mindedness are heavy and dark. Distraction and confusion at least have a place, but in laziness and absent-mindedness, the anima alone is active. In inattention, the animus is still present, but in laziness, pure darkness rules. If one becomes sleepy during meditation, that is an effect of laziness. Breathing alone serves to remove laziness. Although the breath that flows in and out through the nose is not the true breath, the flowing in and out of the true breath is connected with it. While sitting, one must, therefore, always keep the heart quiet and the power concentrated. How can the heart be made quiet? By breathing. The heart alone must be conscious of the flowing in and out of the breath. It must not be heard with the ears. If it is not heard, then the breathing is light. If light, it is pure. If it can be heard, then the breathing power is heavy. If heavy, then it is troubled. If it is troubled, then laziness and absent-mindedness develop, and one wants to sleep. That is self-evident. How to use the heart correctly during breathing must be understood. It is use without use. One need only let the light fall quite gently on the hearing. This sentence contains a secret meaning. What does it mean to let the light fall? It is the radiance of the light of one's own eyes. The eye looks inward only and not outward. To sense brightness without looking outward means to look inward. It has nothing to do with an actual looking within. What does hearing mean? It is hearing the light of one's own ear. The ear listens only within and does not listen to what is outside. To sense brightness without listening to what is outside is to listen to what is within. It has nothing to do with actually listening to what is within. In this sort of hearing, one only hears that there is no sound. In this kind of seeing, one only sees that no shape is there. If the eye is not looking outward and the ear is not hearkening outward, they close themselves and are inclined to sink inward. Only when one looks and hearkens inward does the organ not go outward nor sink inward. In this way, laziness and absent-mindedness are done away with. That is the union of the seed and the light of the sun and moon. If, as a result of laziness, one becomes sleepy, one should stand up and walk about. When the spirit has become clear, one can sit down again. If there is time in the morning, one may sit during the burning of an incense candle. That is the best. In the afternoon, human affairs interfere, and one can therefore easily fall into laziness. It is not necessary to have an incense candle, but one must lay aside all complications and sit quite still for a time. In the course of time, there will be success without one's getting lazy and falling asleep. The chief thought of this part is that the most important thing about the circulation of the light is making the breathing rhythmical. The further the work advances, the deeper becomes the teaching. The pupil must bring heart and breathing into relationship during the circulation of the light in order to avoid the burden of laziness and distraction. The master fears lest during the séance, when the beginners have lowered their lids, confused fantasies may arise, because of which the heart will begin to beat, so that it is difficult to guide. Therefore he teaches the work of counting the breath and fixing the thoughts of the heart, in order to prevent the power of the spirit from flowing outward. Because breath comes out of the heart, unrhythmical breathing comes from the heart's unrest. Therefore one must breathe in and out quite softly, so that it remains inaudible to the ear, and only the heart quietly counts the breaths. When the heart forgets the number of breaths, that is a sign that the heart has gone off into the outer world. Then one must hold the heart steadfast. If the ear does not listen attentively or the eyes not look at the back of the nose, it often happens that the heart runs off outside or that sleep comes. That is a sign that the condition is going over into confusion and absent-mindedness, and the seed spirit must be brought into order again. If in lowering the lids and taking direction from the nose, the mouth is not tightly closed and the teeth are not clenched firmly together, it can easily happen that the heart hastens outward. Then one must close the mouth quickly and clench the teeth together. The 5 senses order themselves according to the heart, and the spirit must call the breathing power to aid in order that the heart and breath are harmonized. In this way there is need at most of daily work of a few quarter hours for heart and breathing to come of themselves into the right sort of collaboration and harmony. Then one need no longer count, and breathing becomes rhythmical of its own accord. When the breathing is rhythmical, the mistakes of laziness and distraction disappear of their own accord. 5. Mistakes during the circulation of the light. Master Lao Tzu said, "Your work will gradually draw itself together and mature. But before you reach the condition in which you sit like a withered tree before a cliff, there are many other possibilities of error which I would like to bring to your special attention. These conditions are only recognized when they have been personally experienced. I will enumerate them here. My school differs from the Buddhist yoga school, Chao Sung, 16. 16 in Japanese, Zen, in that it has confirmatory signs for each step of the way. First, I would like to speak of the mistakes and then of the confirmatory signs. When one sets out to carry out one's decision, care must be taken to see that everything can proceed in a comfortable, easy manner. Too much must not be demanded of the heart. One must be careful that quite automatically heart and power correspond to one another. Only then can a state of quietness be attained. During this quiet state, the right conditions in the right place must be provided. One must not sit down to meditate in the midst of frivolous affairs. That is to say, one must not have any vacuities in the mind. All entanglements must be put aside, and one must be supreme and independent. Nor must the thoughts be directed toward the right procedure. If too much trouble is taken, there is danger of doing this. I do not mean that no trouble is to be taken, but the right behavior lies in the middle way between being and non-being. If one can attain purposelessness through purpose, then the thing has been grasped. Supreme and without confusion, one goes along in an independent way. Furthermore, one must not fall victim to the ensnaring world. The ensnaring world is where the 5 kinds of dark demons disport themselves. This is the case, for example, when, after fixation, one has chiefly thoughts of dry wood and dead ashes, and few thoughts of the resplendent spring on the great earth. In this way one sinks into the world of darkness. The power is cold there, breathing is heavy, and many images of coldness and decay display themselves. If one tarries there long, one enters the world of plants and stones. Nor must a man be led astray by the 10,000 ensnarements. This happens if, after the quiet state has begun, one after another all sorts of ties suddenly appear. One wants to break through them and cannot. One follows them and feels relieved by this. This means the master has become a servant. If a man tarries in this state long, he enters the world of illusory desires. At best, one goes to heaven. At the worst, one goes among the fox spirits. 17. According to Chinese folklore, foxes can also cultivate the life elixir. They thus attain the capacity of transforming themselves into human beings. They correspond to the nature of demons of Western mythology. Such a fox spirit might also occupy himself in the famous mountains, enjoying the wind and the moon, the flowers and fruits, and taking his pleasure in coral trees and jeweled grass. But after he has been occupied thus for 300 to 500 years, or at the most for a couple of thousand years, his reward is over and he is born again into the world of turmoil. All of these are wrong paths. When a man knows the wrong paths, he can then inquire into the confirmatory signs. The meaning of this section, 18, is to call attention to the wrong paths of meditation, so that one can enter the place of power instead of the cave of fantasy. 18. This section shows plainly a Buddhist influence. The temptation mentioned here consists in one's being impelled by these fantasies to take them as real, and to succumb to them. Compare the scene where Mephistopheles puts Faust to sleep by means of his demon. This is the world of demons. This, for example, is the case if one sits down to meditate and sees light flames or bright colors appear, or if one sees bodhisattvas and gods approach, or any other similar fantasies, or if one is not successful in uniting power and breathing, if the water of the kidneys cannot rise but presses downward, the primordial power becomes cold and the breathing heavy. Then the gentle light powers of the great earth are too few, and the empty fantasy world is entered. Or when one has sat a long time, ideas rise up in crowds and one tries to stop them, but it cannot be done. One submits to being driven by them and feels easier. When this happens, one must under no circumstances go on with meditation, but must get up and walk around a little while until heart and power are again in unison. Only then can one return to meditation. In meditating, a man must have a sort of conscious intuition, so that he feels power and breathing unite in the field of the elixir. He must feel that a warm release belonging to the true light begins to stir dimly. Then he has found the right place. When this right place has been found, one is released from the danger of getting into the world of illusory desire or dark demons. 6. Confirmatory experiences during the circulation of the light. Master Lao Tzu said, "There are many kinds of confirmatory experiences. One must not content oneself with the small demands, but must rise to the thought that all living creatures have to be freed. It is not permissible to be trivial and irresponsible in heart. One must strive to make deeds prove one's words." If, when there is quiet, the spirit has continuously and uninterruptedly a sense of great gaiety, as if intoxicated or freshly bathed, it is a sign that the light principle in the whole body is harmonious. Then the golden flower begins to bud. When, furthermore, all openings are quiet, and the silver moon stands in the middle of heaven, and one has the feeling that the great earth is a world of light and brilliancy, that is a sign that the body of the heart opens itself to clarity. It is a sign that the golden flower is opening. Furthermore, the whole body feels strong and firm, so that it fears neither storm nor frost. Things by which other men are displeased when I meet them cannot cloud the brightness of the seed of the Spirit. Yellow gold fills the house. The steps are white jade. Rotten and stinking things on earth that come in contact with one breath of the true power will immediately live again. Red blood becomes milk. The fragile body of the flesh is sheer gold and diamonds. That is a sign that the golden flower is crystallized. The Book of Successful Contemplation, Ying Kuan Qing, says, "The sun sinks in the great water, and magic pictures of trees and rose arise." The setting of the sun means that in chaos, in the world before phenomena, that is, the intelligible world, a foundation is laid. That is the condition free of opposites, Wu Qi. Highest good is like water, pure and spotless. It is the ruler of the great polarity, the God who is revealed in the sign for that which greatly disturbs. Chen 19. Compare the I Ching section, Shuo Kua, the signs. Chen is the sign for thunder, spring, east, wood. The creative heaven in this division is in the northwest, the abysmal in the north. Chen is also symbolized by wood, wherefore the image of trees in rows appears. A sevenfold row of trees means the light of the 7 body openings, or heart openings. In the northwest is the direction of the creative. When it moves on one place farther, the abysmal is there. The sun which sinks into the great water is the image for the creative and abysmal. The abysmal is the direction of midnight. Mouse, Zhu, north. At the winter solstice, the thunder, Chen, is in the middle of the earth, quite hidden and covered up. Only when the sign Chen is reached does the light pole come over the earth again. That is the picture representing the row of trees. The rest can be correspondingly inferred. The second part refers to the building of the foundation on this. The great world is like ice, a glassy world of jewels. The brilliancy of the light is gradually crystallized. That is why a great terrace arises, and upon it, in the course of time, Buddha appears. When the golden being appears, who should it be but Buddha? For Buddha is the golden saint of the great enlightenment. This is a great confirmatory experience. Now there are 3 confirmatory experiences which can be tested. The first is that when one has entered the state of meditation, the gods, 20, are in the valley. 20. Compare Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching, section 6. Men are heard talking as though at a distance of several hundred paces, each one quite clear. But the sounds are all like an echo in a valley. One can always hear them, but never oneself. This is called the presence of the gods in the valley. At times, the following can be experienced. As soon as one is quiet, the light of the eyes begins to blaze up, so that everything before one becomes quite bright, as if one were in a cloud. If one opens one's eyes and seeks the body, it is not to be found any more. This is called, in the empty chamber it grows light. Inside and outside, everything is equally light. That is a very favorable sign. Or when one sits in meditation, the fleshly body becomes quite shining like silk or jade. It seems difficult to remain sitting. One feels as if drawn upward. This is called, the spirit returns and pushes against heaven. In time, one can experience it in such a way that one really floats upward. And now it is possible to leave all three of these experiences. But not everything can be expressed. Different things appear to each person according to his gifts. If one experiences these things, it is a sign of a good aptitude. With these things it is just as it is when one drinks water. With these things it is just as it is when one drinks water. One can tell for oneself whether the water is warm or cold. In the same way, a man must convince himself about these experiences. Then only are they real. 7. The living manner of the circulation of the light. Master Lao Tzu said, "When there is gradual success in producing the circulation of the light, a man must not give up his ordinary occupation in doing it." The ancients said, "When occupations come to us, we must accept them. When things come to us, we must understand them from the ground up." If the occupations are regulated by correct thoughts, the light is not scattered by outside things, but circulates according to its own law. Even the still invisible circulation of the light gets started this way. How much more then is it the case with the true circulation of the light, which has already manifested itself clearly? When in ordinary life one has the ability always to react to things by reflexes only, without any admixture of a thought of others or of oneself, that is a circulation of the light arising out of circumstances. It is the first secret. If early in the morning a man can rid himself of all entanglements and meditate from 1 to 2 double hours, and then can orientate himself towards all activities and outside things in a purely objective, reflex way, and if this can be continued without any interruption, then after 2 or 3 months all the perfected ones come from heaven and sanctify such behavior. The preceding section deals with the blissful fields that are entered when one succeeds in the work. The aim of this part is to show the pupils how they must shape their work more finely day by day, so that they can hope for an early attainment of the elixir of life. How does it happen that the Master just here speaks of the fact that a man ought not to give up his calling in life as a citizen? It might be thought from this that the Master wanted to prevent the pupil from attaining the elixir of life quickly. He who knows replies to this, not at all. The Master is concerned lest the pupil may not have fulfilled his karma. Therefore he speaks in this way. Now if the work has led into the blissful fields, the heart is like the reflecting surface of water. When things come, it mirrors things. When they go, spirit and power spontaneously unite, and do not allow themselves to be carried away by outside things. That is what the Master means when he says, "Every interference of the thought with other people and with oneself must be completely given up." When the pupil succeeds in concentrating with true thoughts on the place of power, he does not have to start the light circulating, and the light circulates by itself. But when the light circulates, the elixir is made spontaneously, and the performance of worldly tasks at the same time is not a hindrance. It is different at the beginning of the work of meditation, when spirit and power are still scattered and confused. If worldly affairs cannot then be kept at a distance, and a quiet place found where one can concentrate with all one's power, and thus avoid all disturbances from ordinary occupations, then one is perhaps industrious in the morning and certainly lazy in the evening. How long would it take in this way till a man attained to the real secrets? Therefore it is said, when one begins to apply the work, one should put aside household affairs. And if that is not wholly possible, someone ought to be engaged to look after them, so that one can take pains with complete attention. But when the work is so far advanced that secret confirmations are experienced, it does not matter if at the same time the ordinary affairs are put in order so that one can fulfill one's karma. This means the living manner of the circulation of the light. Long ago, a true man of the purple polar light, Zhu Yang Chen Yen, made a saying, "When a man lives in contact with the world, and yet still in harmony with the light, then the round is round and the angular has angles. Then he lives among men concealed, yet visible, different and yet the same, and none can compass it. Then no one takes note of our secret life and being. The living manner of the circulation of the light has just this meaning, to live in contact with the world, and yet in harmony with the light." 8. A magic spell for the far journey. Master Lao Tzu said, Yu Ch'ing has left behind him a magic spell for the far journey. 4 words crystallize the spirit in the place of power. In the 6th month, the white snow is suddenly seen to fly. At the 3rd watch, the disk of the sun sends out shining rays. On the water blows the wind of gentleness. Wandering in heaven, one eats the spirit power of the receptive, in the deeper secret within the secret. The land that is nowhere, that is the true home. These verses are full of mystery. The meaning is, the most important thing in the great meaning is the 4 words, non-action in action. Non-action prevents a man from becoming entangled in form and image or substantiality. Action in non-action prevents a man from sinking into numbing emptiness and a dead nothingness. The effect depends entirely on the central one. The freeing of the effect is in the 2 eyes. The 2 eyes are like the pole of the great wain which turns the whole of creation. They cause the poles of light and darkness to rotate. The elixir depends from beginning to end on the one. The metal in the middle of the water, that is, the lead in the water region. Heretofore we have spoken of the circulation of the light, indicating thereby the initial release which works from without upon what lies within. This is to aid one in obtaining the master. It is for the pupils in the beginning stages. They go through the 2 lower transitions in order to gain the upper one. After the sequence of events is clear and the nature of the release is known, heaven no longer withholds the meaning, but reveals the ultimate truth. Disciples keep it secret and hold to it strictly. The circulation of the light is the inclusive term. The further the work advances, the more can the golden flower bloom. But there is a still more marvelous kind of circulation. Till now we have worked from the outside on what is within. Now we tarry in the center and rule what is external. Hitherto it was a service in aid of the master. Now it is a dissemination of the commands of this master. The whole relationship is now reversed. If one wants to penetrate the more delicate regions by this method, one must first see to it that the body and heart are completely controlled, that one is quite free and at peace, letting go of all entanglements, untroubled by the slightest excitement, with the heavenly heart exactly in the middle. Then let one lower the lids of the two eyes as if one received a holy edict, a summons to the minister. Who would dare disobey? Then one illumines the house of the abysmal water Khan with both eyes. Wherever the golden flower appears, the true light of polarity goes out to meet it. The principle of that which adheres to lightness, Li, is light outside and dark within. It is the body of the creative. Darkness enters and becomes master. The result is that the heart, consciousness, becomes dependent on things, is directed outward, and is tossed about on the stream. When the rotating light shines within the heart, it does not become dependent on things. The power of the dark is limited, and the golden flower shines with concentration. It is then the collected light of polarity. Things which are related attract each other. Thus, the polarity light line of the abysmal presses upward. It is not only the light in the abyss, but it is the creative light meeting creative light. As soon as these two substances meet each other, they unite inseparably, and unceasing life begins. It comes and goes, rises and falls of itself in the house of the primordial power. One is aware of effulgence and infinity. The whole body feels lighter and would like to fly. This is the state of which it is said, "Clouds fill the 1,000 mountains." Gradually, life, goes here and there quite quietly. It rises and falls imperceptibly. The pulse stands still and breathing stops. This is the moment of true creative unity, the state of which, it is said, the moon gathers up the 10,000 waters. In the midst of this darkness, the heavenly heart suddenly begins a movement. This is the return of the one light, the time when the child comes to life. But the details of this must be carefully explained. When a person looks at something, listens to something, eyes and ears move and follow the things until they have passed. These movements are all underlings, and when the heavenly ruler follows them in their tasks, it means to live together with demons. If now, during every moment and every moment of rest, a person lives together with people and not with demons, then the heavenly ruler is the true man. When he moves and we move with him, the movement is the root of heaven. When he is quiet and we are quiet with him, this quietness is the cave of the moon. When he continues to alternate movement and quietness, one ought to go on with him unceasingly in movement and quietness. If he rises and falls with inhaling and exhaling, we must rise and fall with him. That is what is called going to and fro between the root of heaven and the cave of the moon. When the heavenly heart still preserves calm, movement before the right time is a fault of softness. When the heavenly heart has already moved, the movement that follows afterwards, corresponding with it, is a fault of rigidity. As soon as the heavenly heart is stirring, one must immediately mount with all one's feeling to the house of the creative. Thus the light of the Spirit sees the summit that is the leader. This movement is in accord with the time. The heavenly heart rises to the summit of the creative, where it expands in complete freedom. Then suddenly it wants the deepest silence. and one must lead it speedily and with one's whole being into the yellow castle. Thus the eyes behold the central yellow dwelling place of the spirit. When the desire for silence comes, not a single thought arises. He who is looking inward suddenly forgets that he looks. At this time, body and heart must be left completely free. All entanglements disappear without trace. Then I no longer know at what place the house of my spirit and my crucible are. If a man wants to make certain of his body, he cannot get at it. This condition is the penetration of heaven into earth, the time when all wonders return to their roots. The one is the circulation of the light. If one begins, it is at first scattered and one tries to collect it. The six senses are not active. This is the care and nourishment of one's own origin, the filling up of the oil when one goes to receive life. When one is far enough to have gathered it, one feels light and free, and need take no further trouble. This is the quieting of the spirit in the space of the ancestors, the taking possession of former heaven. When one is so far advanced that every shadow and every echo has disappeared, so that one is quite quiet and firm, it is safe within the cave of power, where all that is miraculous returns to its roots. The place is not changed, but divides itself. It is incorporeal space, where 1,010,000 places are one place. The time is not changed, but divides itself. It is immeasurable time when all the eons are like a moment. As long as the heart has not attained complete peace, it cannot move itself. One moves the movement and forgets the movement. This is not movement in itself. Therefore it is said, if, when stimulated by external things, one is moved, it is the instinct of the being. If, when not stimulated by external things, one is moved, it is the movement of heaven. The being that is placed over against heaven can fall and come under the domination of the instincts. The instincts are based upon the fact that there are external things. They are thoughts that go on beyond their own position. Then movement leads to movement. But when no idea arises, the right ideas come. That is the true idea. If things are quiet and one is quite firm, the release of heaven suddenly moves. Is this not a movement without purpose? Action in inaction has the same meaning. As to the beginning of the poem, the two first lines refer entirely to the activity of the golden flower. The two next lines are concerned with the mutual interpenetration of sun and moon. The 6th month is the adhering Li fire. The white snow that flies is the true darkness of polarity in the middle of the fire sign, that is about to turn into the receptive. The 3rd watch is the abysmal Ka'an water. The sun's disk is the one polar line in the sign for water, which is about to turn into the creative. In this is contained the way to take the sign for the abysmal and the way to reverse the sign for the adhering, fire Li. The following two lines have to do with the activity of the pole of the great wane, the rise and fall of the whole release of polarity. Water is the sign of the abysmal. The eye is the wind of softness, sun. The light of the eyes illumines the house of the abysmal, and controls there the seed of the great light. In heaven means the house of the creative, Chien. Wandering in heaven, one eats the spirit power of the receptive. This shows how the spirit penetrates the power and how heaven penetrates the earth. This happens so that the fire can be nourished. Finally, the two last lines point to the deepest secret which cannot be dispensed with from the beginning to the end. It is the washing of the heart and the purification of the thoughts. It is the bath. The holy science takes as a beginning the knowledge of where to stop, and as an end stopping at the highest good. Its beginning is beyond polarity, and it empties again beyond polarity. Buddha speaks of the transient, the creator of consciousness, as being the fundamental truth of religion. And in our Taoism, the expression to produce emptiness contains the whole work of completing life and essence. All three religions agree in the one proposition: the finding of the spiritual elixir in order to pass from death to life. In what does this spiritual elixir consist? It means forever tarrying in purposelessness. The deepest secret in our teaching, the secret of the bath, is confined to the work of making the heart empty. Therewith the heart is set at rest. What I have revealed here in a word is the fruit of decades of effort. If you are not yet clear as to how far all three parts can be present in one part, I will make it clear to you through the threefold Buddhist contemplation about emptiness, delusion, and the center. Emptiness comes as the first of the three contemplations. All things are looked upon as empty. Then follows delusion. Although it is known that they are empty, things are not destroyed, but a man attends to his affairs in the midst of the emptiness. But though one does not destroy things, neither does one pay attention to them. This is contemplation of the center. While practicing contemplation of the empty, one also knows that one cannot destroy the 10,000 things, and still one does not notice them. In this way, the three contemplations fall together. But after all, strength is in visioning the empty. Therefore, when one practices contemplation of emptiness, emptiness is certainly empty, but delusion is empty also, and the center is empty. It needs a great strength to practice contemplation of delusion. Then delusion is really delusion, but emptiness is also delusion, and the center is also delusion. Being on the way of the center, one also creates images of the emptiness, but they are not called empty, but are called central. One practices also contemplation of delusion, but one does not call it delusion, one calls it central. As to what has to do with the center, more need not be said. This section mentions first Yu Qing's magical charm for the far journey. The magical charm states that the secret wonder of the meaning is the developing of something out of nothing. In that, spirit and power unite in crystallized form. There appears, in the course of time, in the middle of the emptiness of nothing, a point of the true fire. During this time, the more quiet the spirit becomes, the brighter is the fire. The brilliance of the fire is compared with the sun's heat in the 6th month. Because the blazing fire causes the water of the abysmal to vaporize, the steam is heated, and when it has passed the boiling point, it mounts upward like flying snow. It is meant by this that snow is seen to fly in the 6th month. But because the water is vaporized by the fire, the true power is awakened. Yet when darkness is at rest, light begins to move. It is like midnight. Therefore, adepts call this time the time of the living midnight. At this time, one works at the power with the purpose of making it rise and flow backward, and fall, flowing downward, like the turning of the wheel of the rising sun. Therefore it is said, at the third watch the disk of the sun sends out shining rays. The rotation method makes use of breathing to blow on the fire of the gates of life. In this way, the true power is successfully brought to its original place. Therefore it is said that the wind blows on the water. Out of the single power of former heaven, there develops the out and ingoing breath of later heaven and its power to set aflame. The way leads from the sacrum upward in a backflowing manner to the summit of the creative, and on through the house of the creative. Then it sinks through 2 stories in a downward flowing way into the solar plexus and warms it. Therefore it is said, wandering in heaven one eats the spirit power of the receptive, because the true power goes back into the empty place in time. Power and form become rich and full. Body and heart become glad and cheerful. If, by the work of the turning of the wheel of the doctrine, this cannot be achieved, how otherwise should one be able to enter upon this far journey? What it amounts to is this: the crystallized spirit flows back to the spirit fire, and by means of the greatest quiet, one fans the fire in the middle of the water, which is the middle of the cave. Therefore it is said, in the deeper secret within the secret, the land that is nowhere, that is the true home. The pupil has penetrated in his work into mysterious territory, but if he does not know the method of melting, it is to be feared that the elixir of life will not be produced. Therefore the Master has revealed the secret strictly guarded by the former holy men. When the pupil keeps the crystallized spirit fixed within the cave of power, and at the same time lets greatest quietness hold sway, then out of the obscure darkness a something develops out of the nothingness, that is, the golden flower of the Great One appears. At this time the conscious light is differentiated from the light of the essence. Therefore it is said, to move when stimulated by external things leads to its going downward and outward and creating a man. At this time the conscious light is differentiated from the light of the essence. Therefore it is said, to move when stimulated by external things leads to its going downward and outward and creating a man. That is conscious light. If at the time the true power has been copiously gathered together, the pupil does not let it flow downward and outward, but allows it to flow backward, that is the light of life. The method of the turning of the water wheel must be used. If one continues to turn, the true power returns to the roots, drop by drop. Then the water wheel stops, the body is clean, the power is fresh. One single turning means one heavenly cycle. That which Master Chiu has called a small heavenly cycle. If one does not wait to use the power until it has been collected sufficiently, it is then too tender and weak, and the elixir is not formed. If the power is there and not used, then it becomes too old and rigid, and also the elixir of life will hardly be produced. When it is neither too old nor too tender, then is the right time to use it with intention. This is what Buddha means when he says, the phenomenon flows into emptiness. This is the sublimation of the seed into power. If the pupil does not understand this principle and lets the power stream away downward, then the power forms into seed. This is what is meant when it is said, emptiness finally flows into the phenomenon. But every man who unites bodily with a woman feels pleasure first and then bitterness. When the seed has flowed out, the body is tired and the spirit languid. It is quite different when the adept lets spirit and power unite. That brings first purity and then freshness. When the seed is transformed, the body is healthy and free. There is a tradition that the old master Paeng grew to be 880 years old because he made use of serving maids to nourish his life. But that is a misunderstanding. In reality, he used the methods of sublimation of spirit and power. In the elixirs of life, symbols are generally used, and in them the adhering fire, Li, is frequently compared to a bride, and the water of the abyss to the boy, Puer Aeternus. From this arose the misunderstanding about Master Paeng having restored his virility through femininity. These are mistakes that have forced their way in later. But adepts can only use the means of overthrowing the abysmal and the adhering Li when their purposes are sincerely in the work. Otherwise, a pure mixture is not produced. The true purpose is subject to the earth. The color of the earth is yellow. Therefore, in books on the life elixir, it is symbolized by the yellow germ. When the abysmal and the adhering Li unite, the golden flower appears. The golden color is white, and therefore white snow is used as a symbol. But worldly people who do not understand the secret words of the books of the life elixir have misunderstood yellow and white, and that they have taken it as a means of making gold out of stones. Is not that foolish? An ancient adept said, "Formerly every new school knew this jewel. Only fools did not know it wholly." If we reflect on this, we see that the ancients really attained long life by the help of the seed power present in their own bodies, and did not lengthen their years by swallowing this or that sort of elixir. But worldly people lose the roots and cling to the treetops. The book of the elixir also says, when the right man, white magician, makes use of wrong means, the wrong means work in the right way. By this is meant the transformation of seed into power. But if the wrong man uses the right means works in the wrong way. By this is meant the bodily union of man and woman, from which spring sons and daughters. The fool wastes the most precious jewel of his body in uncontrolled pleasure, and does not know how to conserve the power of his seed. When it is finished, the body perishes. The holy and wise men have no other way of taking care of their lives except by destroying lusts and safeguarding the seed. The seed that is conserved is transformed into power, and the power, when there is enough of it, makes the creatively strong body. The difference shown by ordinary people depends only upon how they apply the downward flowing way or the backward flowing way. The whole meaning of this section is directed toward making clear to the pupil the method of the filling up the oil in meeting life. Here the eyes are the chief thing. The two eyes are the handle of the polar constellation. Just as heaven turns about the pole star as a center point, so among men the right intention must be the master. Therefore, the completion of the life elixir depends entirely on the harmonizing of the right intention. Then, if it is said that the foundation can be laid in 100 days, first of all the degree of industry and work must be taken into account, and the degree of strength in the physical constitution. Whoever is eager in the work and has a strong constitution succeeds more quickly in turning back the water wheel of the river. When a person has found the method of making thoughts and power harmonize with one another, he can complete the elixir within 100 days. But whoever is weak and lazy will not produce it even after the 100 days. When the elixir is completed, spirit and power are pure and clear. The heart is empty, the essence manifest and the light of consciousness transforms itself into the light of the essence. If the light of the essence is held permanently, the abysmal and the adhering fire Li have intercourse spontaneously. When the abysmal and the fire mix, the holy fruit is born. The ripening of the holy fruit is the effect of a great heavenly cycle. Further elucidation stops with the method of the heavenly cycle. This book is concerned with the cultivation of life and shows at first how one takes hold of it by looking at the bridge of one's nose. The method of making firm and letting go is in another book, the Hesu Ming Fang, Methods of Prolonging Life. Summary. This summary and the following diagram have been arranged by the English translator. Summary of the Chinese concepts on which is based the idea of the golden flower or immortal body. Tao, the undivided Great One, gives rise to two opposite reality principles, darkness and light, yin and yang, or yang. These are at first thought of only as forces of nature apart from man. Later, the sexual polarities and others as well are derived from them. From yin comes Kun, the receptive feminine principle. From yang comes Qian, the creative masculine principle. From yin comes Ming, life. From yang, Hsing, or essence. Each individual contains a central monad which at the moment of conception splits into life and essence, Ming and Hsing. These two are super-individual principles, and so can be related to Eros and Logos. In the personal bodily existence of the individual, they are represented by two other polarities, as a Po, soul, or anima, and a Hun, soul, or animus. All during the life of the individual, these two are in conflict, each striving for mastery. At death, they separate and go different ways. The anima sinks to earth as Kue, a ghost being. The animus rises and becomes Shen, a revealing spirit or God. Shen may in time return to Tao. If the life forces flow downward, that is, without let or hindrance into the outer world, the anima is victorious over the animus. No spirit body or golden flower is developed, and at death the ego is lost. If the life forces are led through the backward flowing process, that is, conserved and made to rise instead of allowed to dissipate, the animus has been victorious, and the ego persists after death. It is then possessed of Shen, the revealing spirit. A man who holds to the way of conservation all through life may reach the stage of the golden flower, which then frees the ego from the conflict of the opposites, and it again becomes part of the Tao, the undivided Great One. As there is ample evidence in the text to show that Buddhist influences represented the golden flower as coming ultimately only from the spiritual side, that fact has been indicated by the dotted arrow leading down from Shen. In undiluted Chinese teaching, however, the creation of the golden flower depends on the equal interplay of both the yang and yin forces.